For years, the headlines have spoken in the language of fire. Israel's fight against his enemies, and Iran dominates the world's attention, a spectacle of iron and resolve. Yet beneath this theater of conflict, another war unfolds in silence. This battle is not fought with weapons forged in factories, but with roots that grip stone, with vines that refuse the verdict of barrenness. The weapon is a grape. The battlefield is soil. Just south of Jerusalem, in the biblical heartland of Judea, sits the village of Tekoa, a name that carries weight across millennia. Here the ancient prophet Amos lived, tended flocks, and spoke words that defied the logic of empires. The mountains shall drip with wine, not metaphor, not hope deferred into eternity, a promise etched into geography itself. Yet for centuries, the land answered with silence. Conquest after conquest stripped the terraces bare. Exile scattered the people who knew the soil's name. The hills of Judea became a graveyard of abandoned dreams, where thorns choked out memory and wind carried only dust. The verdict seemed absolute. Some lands cannot be reclaimed. Some promises cannot survive history's crushing weight. But in the 6th century before Christ, while Israel languished in Babylonian exile, the prophet Amos had seen something else entirely. His vision was not vague consolation, but precise cartography of restoration. I will bring back the captives of my people Israel. They shall build the waste cities and inhabit them. They shall plant vineyards and drink wine from them. The text did not settle for abstraction. It named the act, planting. It named the crop, vineyards. It named the outcome, wine flowing from mountains that had known only barrenness. I will plant them in their land, the Lord declared, and no longer shall they be pulled up from the land I have given them. This was not conditional promise, hedged with clauses and exceptions. This was declarative, final, a sentence written into the future itself. Yet for 2,000 years the land waited, silent, stubborn, resistant to every attempt at restoration. Empires rose and fell, borders shifted, armies marched through the valleys, leaving nothing but ruin. The question lingered, if even a vineyard cannot survive exile, what hope could there be for a people to return? And then came 1948. Israel was reborn, not through diplomacy alone, but through the stubborn refusal of a people to remain scattered. Among those who returned were survivors of Europe's furnaces, carrying in their hands not weapons, but seeds. 2 brothers, Yoni and Gadi, descended from those survivors. Their grandparents had endured the Holocaust and crossed continents to reach this soil. Now, standing in modern-day Tekoa, the brothers survey what their hands have built. Rows of vines stretching toward the horizon, each one a declaration that exile has ended. Agriculture is the border, Yoni says, his voice steady against the wind that has blown through these hills for millennia. Trees, vineyards, they are the line between what is ours and what waits to erase us. The chemistry of the land had not changed. The soil still bore the scars of abandonment, salted earth, eroded terraces, stone that had forgotten the touch of the plow. Yet something impossible had begun. Where thorns once ruled, grapevines now climbed trained wires. Where silence reigned, the sound of irrigation systems hums. A mechanical prayer answered. The brothers walked these roads daily, not as tourists or theorists, but as guardians of something both ancient and urgent. Every day we walk here to guard and keep and watch our lands, Gadi explains. His hands, calloused from driving posts and pruning branches, gesture toward the valley beyond. If you're not planting, you're losing ground. This is not sentiment. This is survival measured in root depth and fruit yield. Then came October 7th, 2023. The call arrived before dawn, a summons that every Israeli citizen knows might come, but hopes will never arrive. Both brothers received it. The IDF needed them. Defense of the nation required more than vines and irrigation schedules. We didn't want it, Gadi remembers, his words clipped by the weight of memory. We wanted to do agriculture, but they said, we need you. For 230 days, nearly 8 months, Gadi traded pruning shears for rifles, his hands that had coaxed life from dry earth, now gripping weapons designed to end it. The vineyard did not pause its demands. While Gadi served on distant front lines, his wife Haba and their 5 children fought a different war. One measured in irrigation schedules, frost warnings, and the relentless advance of weeds that respect no ceasefire. We were terrified, Haba would later say, her voice quiet but unwavering as stone, exhausted beyond measure. But the children learned. They learned what the prophet meant when he said we would never be pulled up again. The vine survived. The family survived. The land did not forget who tended it. When Gadi returned, boots dusty from service, eyes marked by what he'd witnessed, the vineyard greeted him with new growth, shoots that his children had trained, stakes they had driven, soil they had enriched while he was absent. We came back and saw what the teenagers had done, he says, his voice breaking slightly. They had planted a new vineyard. We were very, very happy to see it. The next generation is doing vineyards. This is our vision. The brothers' vineyard is not an isolated miracle. Across the hills of Judea and Samaria, a transformation is underway, silent, systematic, and impossible to ignore. When Yoni and Gadi's family first arrived, only a few caravans dotted the barren hillside. Now terraces climb the slopes in geometric precision. Orchards push back the desert. Date palms, grown from seeds unearthed at Masada after 2,000 years of sleep, stretch skyward and bear their first harvest. The scale defies expectation. What began as scattered homesteads has become a regional phenomenon. Thousands of acres reclaimed, hundreds of families rooted, an entire landscape rewritten. Israel's government recently approved a symbolic resolution to once again take control of Judea, Samaria, and the Jordan Valley, regions where Abraham walked, where David ruled, where prophets saw visions of return. Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson stood among the ancient ruins of Shiloh, his words echoing across stone that had witnessed empires rise and fall. These mountains belong to the Jewish people, he declared, by right, not by conquest, not by modern politics, by covenant written before the first vine was ever planted. Driving through the hills with Yoni, the evidence spreads in every direction. He points to valleys once barren, now green with cultivation. This is forefather land, he says, his hand sweeping across the vista. Bible land, our valley. This is where we planted most of our vineyards. The next valley over still bears its ancient name, Amos Valley, not a memorial to the past, but a continuation of it. This is the original Amos Valley, Yoni explains, his voice dropping to reverence. If you go all the way east, you will meet the Dead Sea. Amos's grave is over there. He kneels, placing his palm against sun-warmed limestone, stone that has endured conquest, exile, and silence. I'm touching what the prophet touched. The connection is not sentimental. It is geological, testimonial, a handshake across 27 centuries. The brothers do not speak of partnering with history. They speak of partnering with prophecy itself. There's a deep spiritual relationship between the grape, the wine, and the people of Israel, Gaddy says, his gaze fixed on the horizon where desert meets cultivation. Our nation was divorced from this land for 2,000 years. You can be divorced from your land, from your story. His voice hardens. My grandfather and my grandmother were in Europe during the 40s. They survived the furnace. They came to the reborn state, and they planted. Every vine they plant is more than agriculture. It is memory made tangible, exile reversed, curse broken. My best relationship is with the ground, Yoni says simply, with the land itself, driving posts, bringing water, enriching the soil, nurturing vines for 3 years until the 4th year and the first harvest. 3 years of faith, 3 years of labor against every odd, 3 years of believing the desert will answer. It excites me when I'm holding a plant, seeing what's going on, he continues, cradling a young shoot. It's like a baby. Everything is in nature. God does everything for us. The vineyard is belief made visible. I believe in this land. I believe in the future. I believe in the next generations. Yet the question remains, is this restoration merely human determination, or is something larger at work? The answer lies not in sentiment, but in the precision of the pattern itself. Amos 9:11 begins with architectural language. On that day I will raise up the tabernacle of David, which has fallen down, and repair its damages. I will raise up its ruins and rebuild it, as in the days of old. Not Solomon's temple, that monument to human ambition, but David's tabernacle, something older, simpler, a tent where presence dwelled before monuments claimed it. The promise continues with geographic precision, that they may possess the remnant of Edom and all the Gentiles who are called by my name. Here the covenant widens. The Apostle Paul called it a grafting. Wild olives joined to the cultivated tree. Gentiles welcomed into restoration not as spectators, but as participants. Behold, the days are coming, says the Lord, when the plowman shall overtake the reaper, and the treader of grapes him who sows seed. This is the promise of acceleration. Harvest so abundant that planting cannot keep pace with reaping, wine pressing overlapping with sowing. The mountains will drip with sweet wine, and all the hills shall flow with it. Not trickle, drip, flow, abundance that defies the desert's ancient verdict. I will bring back the captives of my people Israel. They shall build the waste cities and inhabit them. They shall plant vineyards and drink wine from them. They shall also make gardens and eat fruit from them. The pattern is unmistakable. Return, rebuild, replant. In that precise order, with surgical specificity, I will plant them in their land, and no longer shall they be pulled up from the land I have given them, says the Lord your God. This is not conditional. It is declarative, final, a sentence that history itself must honor. Standing in Tekoa today, surrounded by vines that should not exist according to every historical precedent, the fulfillment becomes visible. The prophecy has been realized in our generation, beginning in 1948 with Israel's rebirth, accelerating with every acre reclaimed, witnessed in real time by those willing to see. Skeptics argue for coincidence, for natural agricultural recovery, for human determination alone explaining what unfolds here. Yet the precision defies randomness. The timing aligns with uncanny exactness. The location matches prophecy's cartography. This isn't just about reclaiming the desert and cultivating a vineyard, the reporter observes, standing where Amos once walked. This is about reclaiming the land of Israel for future generations. In Tekoa, the brothers plant, the children learn, the vines grow, and the mountains, as promised 27 centuries ago, drip with wine. What remains is not a question of whether prophecy can be fulfilled, but an invitation to witness what happens when a people refuse to accept exile as their final word. May every captive in Gaza return. May every word spoken over that land be honored. May peace come, not as politicians define it with borders and treaties, but as the land itself testifies when roots take hold, when grapes cluster in defiance of every curse, when wine flows from mountains that once knew only dust, the restoration of the land, the return of the people, the desert blooming as the prophets said it would. If he can reverse 2,000 years of exile with a grapevine, who can say what else might be restored in those who wait?